the Louisville Branch NAACP Education Chair. And my co-moderator is Mr. Ian Brandon. Mr. Brandon is the Satellite Office Supervisor from the Department of Diversity, Equity, and Poverty. Before we begin, I would like you to keep your microphones on mute. This action will eliminate any background noise that may disturb our presenters. There will be a question and answer period at the end of the presentation. In our efforts to make this forum more viable, there is now an evaluation link for this forum. Tonight, the forum focuses on the school safety administrator, what we can expect from them, and this new initiative. At this time, I would like Mr. Brandon to talk about the links that have been added and to welcome any guests. Mr. Brandon?
Thank you, Ms. Patrick. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us this evening. I would like to bring greetings on behalf of the Department of Diversity, Equity, and Poverty and Chief John Marshall. As Ms. Porter indicated, we do have a couple of links. I want specifically our JCPS individuals to pay attention to. I will be dropping a PD link for sign-in. So that is where you will receive your PD credit. And for all attendees, we do have a brief survey regarding the forum. So we would love and encourage your feedback as we continue to put these forums together. We want to continue to bring you guys information that you want and just continue to help us improve the forum. So that link will be posted at the end of the forum, and I will drop the sign-in link after we begin. I want to take a moment to recognize any board members that may be present and allow a brief hello from any board members.
Do you want us to say hello?
I would love if you would say hello. Welcome.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for the opportunity to be here this evening. Sorry, my schedule has not allowed me to be here before now, but thank you. I look forward to the conversation this evening. I'm not going to talk long. I talk too much, but I will say to everyone that made it to the polls to vote, thank you. Our vote is very important right now. This is not the only election that we have to be concerned about, but for everyone. And I want to give a special thanks to District 1. They did a magnificent job of getting to the polls. So having said that, have a great evening. I'm here to listen and learn. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Porter. And at this time, I will turn it back over to Ms. Patrick. Thank you.
Let's begin with the introduction of our guest speakers tonight. Since we have 3 people here, and I just believe ladies should be first. So we're going to start with Miss LaTanya Collins. She is a Louisville Male High School graduate. She obtained her bachelor's and master's degree in social work. Ms. Collins has a certification in school social work and respectively from the University of Kentucky in Louisville. Ms. Collins is a former mental health practitioner and now serves as a safety administrator at Cosby Middle School. I'm now going to move on to Dr. Matt Anderson. Dr. Anderson currently serves as the Executive Administrator of Culture and Climate with Jefferson County Public Schools. This office oversees numerous departments, including restorative practices, bullying, pupil personnel, trauma-informed care, PBIS, safe crisis management, and student relations. Most recently, Dr. Anderson has worked to increase safety supports for all students within JCPS. This has included the implementation of the safety administrator role within the JCPS school safety plans. Dr. Anderson has worked to increase mental health support for JCPS students by implementing a violence preventive program in collaboration with the mayor's office. And last, Mr. Robert Moore. He is our JCPS Chief of Schools. Mr. Moore supervises district assistant superintendent who are responsible for teaching and learning. Mr. Moore also supervises the choice school programs and activities and athletic programs for the district. Mr. Moore is a graduate of Shawnee High School. He has a master's in administration and obtained a certificate in pupil personnel. In the fall of 2017, Mr. Moore obtained his superintendent certification from the University of Kentucky. I would like to take this time to thank you all for being here with us tonight, and let's begin.
Let me share my screen. Good evening, everyone. It's good to see you. Everyone see that? All right. Chief Moore, you're going to kick us off this evening.
Absolutely. And I'm sure you're going to drive, so appreciate you driving this evening. Welcome, everyone. Definitely blessed to be here with you guys to give you an update and a review of our school safety administrator position. Been in effect since August, our first day of school, but we did have some summer training. So I'm going to be brief and give you an overview of how we got to the point of hiring our safety administrators and how they work towards our whole safety plan. And then I'm going to kick it to Dr. Anderson and the real star of the show, LaTanya Collins, who is a practicing safety administrator. If you can go back to Matt.
Yep, I'm going to try to. I hit the wrong button here.
Okay, just real briefly, give you an overview of our safety plan. We have two positions that we're going to talk about that work with one another for our overall safety plan. It's the safety administrator and our school's security officer. The acronym for that is SSO. The acronym for safety administrators is we call them our SAs. In combination, these two schools bring in safety support in different ways to our schools. The one we're going to talk about is safety administrator, the one on the left, which really manages all of our safety related issues in our school, making sure that they up to date on drills, practicing drills. Everyone knows all the processes and procedures for anything safety related. Bullet number 2 is probably one of the most important things, and we have seen and heard a lot of positives coming from that one, is building strong relationship with students. We know that's key to not just teaching and learning, but that's also key to school safety. And then assist with all aspects of school safety procedures, including, but not exclusive to our threat assessments, mobile assessments, threat monitoring, and making sure that they're communicating with administrators at the school level and at the district level whenever there's any kind of threat or safety issue. This person is going to report to the principal. We're going to have 2 assigned to each elementary, with the exception of elementary, which we have 2 that are assigned to each elementary assistant suit. So we couldn't possibly fill 91 safety administrators in our school. So we had to geographically assign some of our safety administrators to our elementary schools. But as you can see from the bottom, each high school and each middle school has a safety administrators with some exceptions, and we'll talk about those in a bit. And just real briefly, the school safety officer, this is our obligation by law to have armed officers available for schools. We have approximately 3 to 7 schools in a specific geographic zone for officers that they're going to patrol. They serve a set of schools, typically a middle school, a high school, and several elementary schools. There could be numerous middle schools or high schools within their zone, depends on where they are geographically. again, serves as our armed sworn officers, and they are work in tandem in partnership with the safety administrator, who typically reaches out to the SSO for support, and also working with our school administrators as well. And bring support to security and investigation. They report to the security and investigations department. That's why, main reason why we're going to only talk to the safety administrator, because they fall within another department. Even though they work closely together, the SSO falls under operations. And it's very similar to what our current district security monitor, if you're familiar with that. And we are increasing our number of officers at this time. And briefly, there's the purpose of our safety administrators. Again, culture and climate is not only important for teaching and learning, but is also very vital when it comes to safety, and when it comes to school safety. We definitely benefit from having a strong culture and climate. Build relationship and trust with students. You're gonna hear some anecdotal early success from building that trust with students and employees. Maintain that positive relationship with school stakeholders, our teachers in the building, our administrators, our district administrators in our community, and to assist with all school safety procedures, as I mentioned earlier. One big note there at the bottom: this person is not responsible for student discipline. They're not going to be handing out any resolution or punitive or punishment to our students. So I want to make that very, very clear. That is not the role of the safety administrator. Any resolutions will be handed out by the assistant principal or the principal. And then lastly, I talked about how safety administrators are assigned to middle school and high school. And I want to just go over some exceptions. The first one, we've granted comprehensive schools with 2 levels, Shawnee and Moore, a safety administrator for both levels. Even though one school is a lot bigger than the other, it still just made sense to us to have one devoted to middle school, because it's a totally different student population and they're in different sides of the building. It just made sense for us. So each one of those schools has a second safety administrator. And then middle school and high schools that are tier 4 in the new allocation, a second safety administrator. So tier 4 are schools that fall under our high needs index, and they either have a combination of high population of free and reduced lunch, high population of ESL, and high population of ECE, and it configures this needs index score. And those are the schools that we provided with a second safety administrators. Again, they report to the principals, tied really closely to Dr. DeFerrari and Dr. Anderson's Department of Culture and School Climate. So even though they report to the principal, Dr. Anderson and company are responsible for providing a lot of the training, a lot of the oversight, and they work in tandem with me when we do have safety issues. And it has so far has been a growing and positive experience. And I talked about the coordinating training through culture and climate. So that's just a brief overview of how we got into getting safety administrators into the building. Dr. Anderson is going to talk about the hiring process and the training. And then Ms. Collins is going to kick in and talk about what it's like day to day for a safety administrator.
All right. Thank you, Chief Moore. Good evening, everyone. It's good to see you. As this is a new position within the district and a part of the larger safety plan, as many of you know, we went on a pretty extensive tour seeking feedback from our stakeholders just around how to best implement this process and this new position alongside the SSOs. And we knew that given the nature of this work, we're going to need to train them a lot. So what you see before you is a whole host of the initial trainings that were outlined for this position. We'll talk a little bit later about where we are on the training. It is extensive. And most of what you see here is a combination of what we knew safety administrators would need, but also what our community wanted them to have. And we really appreciated that feedback And you can see it's varied. We have everything from implicit bias training to learning about ECE students, to learning about PBIS, to being trauma informed, providing our safety administrators with drug resources, and then just general things like how to be an employee in JCPS, what that looks like, all the things they need to know as a new employee in our district. So there was a lot we knew we had to tackle early on. This position officially started in July. And from the get-go, we've increased training a ton. So safety administrators began their year mid-July with essentially a week-long onboarding. That was a variety of things, from an overall meeting with culture and climate, a meeting with their principal and their assistant principals. And then we started immediately on this training. And so in the first week, we prioritized this list and began getting our safety administrators trained. Much of this training does come from within our own departments in the district. So we've collaborated with numerous partners throughout the district to ensure that this is going to happen. And our goal is to have all of these. And we've even identified a lot more since the start of school that we think would be relevant and helpful based on some principal feedback, some safety administrator feedback, and also feedback from our assistant superintendents and our collaborations with Chief Moore. Since the start of school, safety administrators participate in a 1 day, once a month. We have an entire training calendar for the year, so they spend an entire day just with one another. The other thing we really wanted to do around all of this as a new position is provide opportunities for them to collaborate with one another. They are kind of an isolated staff in each building, and we knew it was going to be important as they began to have some experiences to share those with one another, talk about strategies for how they're working through some of their safety plans, supporting students, and really just giving them that collaboration time. So that's been important. The other thing that we knew was going to be really important, and we really built this into the training schedule, is giving our safety administrators some time to get acclimated and embedded into the school community. Often, as a new classified position to the district, this staff isn't always coming from within the building or coming from within JCPS. So we wanted to make sure, and we blocked off literally the first, I want to say 2 to 3 weeks after we did our initial onboarding. They had 2 to 3 weeks where we just left them alone and allowed them to collaborate with the staff in their buildings and give them a chance to really start to meet people, understand the lay of the building, work through some of their safety plans, go over some of the role clarity and expectations with their principals, and even give it time to train some staff on some things that they had learned at their initial onboarding session. So it was important that we blocked off that time and left them alone and gave them some time to really embed themselves in the school community, so that they felt included and could be a part of that. I'll talk a little bit more about the onboarding. As Chief Moore mentioned, this whole process started, I believe it was in January and February of 2022 when the board approved the overall safety plan. And as of May, we started the hiring process. So what we did was allowed anyone meeting the criteria, they applied to the district as a district level position. As such, we had over 100 applicants. There are some key elements of this role that we'll talk about a little bit later that we knew were going to be important. Some key experiences, some key kind of mindsets. And so we really wanted to make sure that we had an awesome pool to begin with. And so what we did as a district is myself and Culture and Climate collaborated with DEP and our assistant superintendents in each zone. And we went through an entire screening process. So we took all of the applications. They were initially vetted through HR to make sure they were, met the minimum criteria for hiring. And then we went to town and literally reviewed resumes for over 100 people. And many of those made it through. And from that screening process, what we did then was share those with principals. And as you know, and as a reminder, Culture and Climate is really kind of overseeing the implementation, the training. We're supporting the hiring process and all of that. But at the end of the day, it's the principal's responsibility. They know their building, they know their building's needs the best. And so they're responsible for conducting those interviews and ultimately hiring and ultimately evaluating those positions. So we were on a pretty tight timeline, knowing that we wanted to start the year with fully staffed with this position, and we wanted our safety administrators to not only be in place, but be trained and ready to go. So we worked through that district screening process. Principals conducted interviews throughout the summer. And I'm happy to report that we literally started the year with 64 of the 66 vacancies to start the year. So that was really exciting for us. We felt very confident that we had our feet under us with this position in particular to begin the year. So as of today, we are fully staffed. We have hired all 66 positions. That includes all of the 2 positions in the schools that got 2. That includes our elementary safety administrators. Again, there are 6 of those. That's some more numerous zones. And then all of the individual safety administrators at the middle and high school level. So now we have current 0 vacancies. We're excited about that. Everyone is in place, and really we had 2 that were in place, and then they got promoted. So everyone is sticking around so far. Nobody's left us. We just have people going on to bigger and better things, which is important to us. I've outlined some of the demographics of that particular role group. That was extremely important to us, and a message that was communicated, across the board as pivotal for this position. Because again, we want someone who understands our population. We want someone who can build relationships with our students, and that our students felt comfortable coming to as a result of that. And so the other thing that we did with the hiring process to kind of ensure that at the principal level is we created some very consistent norms around the hiring process. We created consistent interview questions that safety administrators would be answering in every school, regardless of where they went, to ensure that we got the appropriate candidate and the candidate that we wanted. And it appears as though we're off and running. The final kind of note here that we realized very quickly, knowing we wanted this position to be supported appropriately, is we needed them to have really a resource at the district level that was a go-to. And so we did end up adding an additional culture and climate staff member. He is our manager of safety administrators. He comes to us from Safe Crisis Management department. He led that department and really understands safety, the uniqueness of how we have to handle each of those situations, and also how we need to couple that with student supports and resources. And so we've also added that position, and that's been very helpful, and I think a resource for our safety administrators as a go-to. I consider that position, if you're familiar with JCPS, essentially the Michelle Searcy of safety administrators, someone that they can meet with regularly and help them kind of work through navigating our large district. So BJ Ritter is in that position. We're excited to have him there and supporting the safety administrators. So some early positive outcomes. We are still early on in this process. We are only a few months into a completely new position that literally isn't replicated anywhere in the nation. That's the other thing about all of this, is there really hasn't been a model for how to implement this. We know what we want, and we've based everything on that. And so we're really taking a look at how we can best implement this, and always looking for initial feedback. Right now, most of that is anecdotal. And I can tell you right now, we're getting some really good feedback around just the communication of safety issues in the school. On almost a daily basis, students are reaching out, even parents in some cases, to this position. They've worked very well, and you'll hear from Tanya in just a second about some of the ways that she's really worked to build relationships with her kids, so that we do have access to information, so that we can ensure if a kid feels unsafe, if a kid feels that he needs some additional resources, or seen or heard something, they have somebody that they can go to address that. And so while I think all of these safety issues were ongoing in the past, now we have a clear person to align that work with and direct those students to. And we're seeing that. I'm also excited to hear that one of the things we've pushed our safety administrators while they're getting their feet underneath them, running drills, mitigating safety issues, is really tried to embed themselves in the culture of the school. And we have numerous examples of how they've done that. We've encouraged them to run student groups, to reach out to students and be kind of mindful of their needs and what might be some gaps in places in the school for students to connect. And we have that. The most recent example of that is actually occurring tomorrow. I think one of our, Tammy, I think I saw you on here. She is one of our safety administrators I didn't know you were going to be on here. Good evening, Tammy. It's good to see you. She's done a
Good evening.
fantastic job at Atherton. And tomorrow she's actually hosting a Veterans Day event. She has started a service to service group for students at Atherton that really focuses a little bit on character development, but also on service and giving back in their community. She saw a need in their school and brought these students together, and they're already at work. And it's a pretty big event. I plan on attending, looking forward to that. That's one example of, some early positive outcomes that we've seen. Overall, I think, I kind of alluded to this at number one, but we've seen an increase in opportunities for just staff that aren't necessarily teachers, that aren't necessarily administrators doing discipline. We've seen this as a great role to connect with kids, given their flexibility throughout the day and knowing kind of what they need to be working on. We've really encouraged them to be present and be visible before school, after school, during school, in the hallway, and at lunch. And that's also increased our opportunities to check in and build relationships with those kids. And that's exactly what we've intended it to be. Again, Tanya will talk about that. More of it from a district perspective. Some of the feedback that we've got both separately from principals and also from assistant superintendents reporting to Chief Moore is that principals are excited that many of their assistant principals now don't have to work through many of the things that they had to in the past. Building mod, drills, emergency and safety procedures manual, threat assessments, school safety teams, safe crisis management. There were a lot of compliance-based things, all related to safety, that administrators were having to spend time working through, developing plans for, and updating. And now we have a role that's doing that. And so the feedback we're getting from our leaders is now they're able to spend more time supporting teachers, providing feedback, and working on professional development, things that will really allow them to impact and focus on academics. So those are just a few things thus far. Again, I can talk about them all day, but I think we'd all rather hear Tanya kind of talk through some of her experiences in this role. So I'm going to turn it over to her. Tanya, again, we thank you for being here and appreciate your time.
Thank you for having me. So just a day in the life of a safety administrator, just to give you some clarity on the role, as Matt said, is I do not issue discipline. I may sit in on a meeting and explain my role to a parent, and I take that with pride every day. Today, I, in a role of a safety administrator, ran a fire drill, my monthly fire drill in my school of 1,034. I was able to successfully get them exited in 2 minutes and 8 seconds. And I take pride in that. 2 minutes and 8 seconds to know that I can get my kids safely out of a building is a big thing for me. I, on a day-to-day, am in the carpool line in the morning. I'm waving and speaking to parents. I make sure that our kids are safe in the building, that all the doors are locked safely. And if there is an issue, I report to my plant operator, who helps me work through those building mods if they're needed. Obviously, this is a new position, so I am learning, and I'm not afraid to go and ask questions if needed. So I'm building relationship with kids every day. I speak. I take great pride in how are you today? And I mean it. I need to know, how are you today? How are you? And I like it, and I tell them thank you when they ask me how I'm doing. I think that says a lot. So in the morning, I'm greeting kids in the carpool line, walking through the cafeteria. That's not one of my big posts, but I do walk through to make sure everybody's all right. Checking lockers. Hey, Ms. Collins, can you help me with the locker? Yes, I can. I'm monitoring cameras. I'm looking around the building to make sure that there's nothing strange going on. So those are some of the things that we do. Big one, safe crisis management. As Dr. Anderson mentioned, we are all trained in safe crisis management, and we have a team. My team consists of 5 to 6 other additional members who respond to an issue before I do. Because again, I want to be that trusted adult for kids, and my teams know, like, they get there before me, and then I'm coming, and then I assist in any way I possibly can. They also told you I'm a former mental health practitioner, so I do have that mental health background to help de-escalate situations, and I am addressing mental health needs every day. I collaborate with my mental health practitioner to make sure that those needs are met, and we address those with parents and kids, and and we need them to be healthy every day as they come into Crosby Middle School. Another big thing that we do is every day working extracurricular activities. Crosby we're one school that hosts a carnival. So last Friday night from 5 to 7, I was there working the carnival, making sure that everybody was having a good time, being seen by parents and kids. So outside of school, I want them to know that I am generally interested. Last night, I ran out and went to the basketball game, making myself seen at the basketball game. And this morning, a young lady greeted me and she said, "Thank you for coming." So just those little simple things as a safety administrator. So again, I take my job very seriously. I make sure that our building is safe. We're doing threat assessments. We've had issues in the building, and I'm sure we're not the only ones where our kids, we say, see something, say something. So they'll come and say, "Hey, Miss Collins, we've had an issue," or "I think I've seen a gun," or I thought I saw a weapon." Okay, well, thank you for telling me. Let me take that serious. And then, I go back and I do follow up with them and say, again, thank you for your help. Thank you for telling someone. And, it wasn't a weapon. You saw his laser or something like that, or anything of that nature. So those are some of the things I do daily as a safety administrator. I also collaborate with the local law enforcement. As Dr. Anderson mentioned, my SSO, I can name his is Mr. Brian Bernardi. Officer Bernardi comes by and we do safety walkthroughs together, and he tells me some things that we can improve upon, and making sure that our doors are locked daily and kids are in class ready to learn, not missing instructional time. Dr. Bernardi is there. Officer Bernardi is there if I need any assistance with any safety concerns in the area or in my building. Anything else you want me to highlight, Dr. Anderson? There. So a big thing for me is I'm building trusting relationships with kids daily. A huge one for me. As he said, these are some of the trainings that we did do early on in July and early August. I've gone through all of them, the Alice training, and making sure that our students know that if we do have an active shooter, and my staff knows where our safety locations are, and our threat-oriented protective posture, as Mr. Stan Mullins would tell you. So our students and staff know where we would need to go if there's an issue. And I provide bullying prevention. So I do some bullying training and restorative practices with kids in the building. So if we have some issues, I do meet with groups of kids, and I pull in my other SRT members to make sure that students know, again, they've got somebody in the building that they can come to if they're having an issue. We don't have to go to the street. We don't have to fight. We don't have to use guns. We don't need weapons. Recently, we did trauma-informed care. So I am trained in trauma-informed care and racial trauma training, which were very wonderful trainings. If you have not participated in those, anybody from JCPS, I would encourage you to do those in the near future. I do have the background with mobile assessments. I know that I can call Peace and OLAP, and I also know that I can call my mental health practitioner now that has replaced me. And again, we work wonderful together in making sure that our kids' mental health needs are met in our building. And anytime we do a threat assessment, I get my team together, and our team will meet and we'll interview students, staff, and contact family members as needed to make sure that there is no major threat or imminent threat to Crosby Middle School. So those are some of the things I'm looking forward. We're doing gatekeeper training at our next meeting next week. As Dr. Anderson said, we meet once monthly, and our meeting next week, gatekeeper training is there. And I'm looking forward. I've already researched it and taking it back to my staff to make sure that we're following all the proper procedures to make sure that our building is safe and secure so that strangers cannot get in.
Right. Thank you, Tanya. I will say today our safety administrators have already experienced 60 hours of training. And so it is intense. There's a lot of onboarding with this role, and that's continuing throughout the year. And Tanya is, I must say, one of our standout safety administrators, which is why she's in front of you today. We appreciate her work. So
Thank you.
She was very modest with her 2 minutes and 8 seconds. Her goal was 2 minutes and 30 seconds. She was very concerned about.
I was very concerned.
So great job. Great job.
Very concerned. My 1,034 kids. And again, I was like, what do we get today? They said 2 minutes and 8 seconds. I said, all right, as long as we beat last month and next month in the code, we will try. My goal is 2 minutes and 5 seconds.
For any of us who have been school administrators, we understand how quickly we need to get out doing a fire drill. I thank you, Ms. Collins. Right now, we're going to move on. It's time for us to have our question and answer period. And I'm going to set the timer for 20 minutes. And I guess I will start us off. Maybe those out in the audience would like to join with us. But I have a question for you, Ms. Collins, and it causes me great concern. One of the things I heard you talk about is school administrators. And when you all clump them, when I think of school administrators, I'm thinking about your principal and your assistant principal. And I'm listening to all the wonderful things that you're taking on as a school administrator. What capacity does the counselor play with you in all that you're doing? Because some of this stuff, when I was the school administrator, you know, the counselor played an important role in helping with this. So I didn't hear that. So would you kind of clear that up for us so that we will know that the school counselor works alongside with you?
Yes, ma'am. So I have wonderful communication at Crosby. I've got 3 school counselors. My 3 school counselors are amazing. We, as administrators, have an open door policy. If we need anything, we can come to one another. My school counselors did go to Oveus bullying training with me. So we are all trained on bullying prevention. They do provide a lot of individual counseling services at Crosby Middle School. They also serve on my threat assessment team. So they're helping me do those threat assessments as needed. Obviously, they're the first line for a kid that would need some mental health needs along with that mental health practitioner. So they deal with a lot of those issues there. So they do serve on my threat assessment team. They're assisting, as you saw, I'm trained with suicide prevention. Obviously, they would be that first line of defense there. So they're doing a lot of those items.
Okay, I have another question for you too. As a state school administrator, over the past 4 months, what has been your greatest accomplishment in the school?
My greatest accomplishment in the school in the last 4 months is having kids see something and say something. That would be one of my greatest accomplishments. That would be one. Knowing that a kid thought that they saw a weapon or thought that they knew somebody was going to fight in a building, and I have those kids come up to me daily. Hey, Miss Collins, I think such and such and such and such are going to fight on the bus today. Today's biggest accomplishment for me, besides my fire drill, would be I had a staff member walk up to me to say, Miss Collins, I'm pretty sure student A has edibles in her backpack. And I'm pretty sure she's going in the bathroom right now to eat those edibles. So just knowing that I built those relationships with my students and staff, that they can come to me with those issues and they're open and it's judgment free. And I tell my kids every day, you can get in trouble today and you can call me any name in the book today, but tomorrow you come in and we start with a fresh slate. Good morning, how are you today, Johnny? Good morning, how are you today, Tammy? And I am okay with that. Every day I can get up, I can wake up and I can smile and we start every day fresh. So some of my biggest accomplishments would be kids coming to me, seeing something and saying something, and staff as well.
I wanted to say I wouldn't have known what an edible was. I just found out about 3 months ago. Okay, just found out. Okay. Ian, would you like to go with the next question? I don't see anything. Would you like to go with the next question?
So Tanya, I've being housed at Shawnee and supervising the satellite office, I've seen the safety administrators in action there and engaging. But I'm curious to know, how was your role rolled out to the students? Like I see them engaging just like you're saying, but I'm interested to know, how was it rolled out and how was the expectation set between student and safety administrator?
So at Crosby, I made it a point to go to individual classes. I have not gone to every class. I will not lie to you and tell you that I have. Obviously, we've got guns, but I've gone to classes to explain my role. I'm visible at open house. We do a weekly newsletter. So the role was explained in the weekly newsletter to parents. And obviously I don't issue discipline, but as our assistant principals and administrators do call to talk about discipline, they explain to them who I am. I'm sitting in the room, I'm listening to the conversations and what I can provide for the families. So that was some of the ways that we rolled ours out. And I mean, as people come in the building, my staff is quick to say, hey, this is Miss LaTanya Collins. She's our safety administrator. And then if they need an explanation, I do explain my role. I try to be very visible so people know where I'm at. Like I said, in the morning, in the afternoon, this afternoon, I did carpool duty. I'm waving at parents. I'm moving them on through. So they do know I exist.
And outside of obviously the requirements of the role and what's laid out by the district, what exactly does a safety administrator plan look like? That was mentioned earlier. Just curious to see what types of metrics or goals are embedded within that plan.
Dr. Anderson, do you want to answer? Or do you
Yeah,
want me to answer?
I could talk through that a little bit. So when we talk about safety plans, there's really two that primarily pop up. That is the threat assessment. And really that is essentially if Tanya were to get a threat, she would work through that with the team. They would determine the threat level and then come up with a safety plan around that individual student based on the particulars of that situation and what that student might need. And that would include things like referral to a counselor or any of those things. So there's threat assessments. We track those at the district. I will tell you those are up. I don't think that's because we have more threats this year. I think it's because we have a person now to really do a better job of tracking them and supporting our kids. So I'm excited. We expected that to be the case. Excuse me. The other major plan is the Safety and Emergency Procedures Manual. That is like a 100-page document that outlines school protocols from all kinds of situations, from school shooter to building entry, hazmat. There are all kinds of things, and that is a plan that has to be prepared each year. And there are various components of that have to be updated each year. The one that is related to that, which is a little bit more oversight from the school safety office at the state, and that is a risk assessment where she comes in or the state will come in and they really just do kind of a safety check of the building. She talked about doing that with her SSO. Those are kind of what we talk about plans, what those actually look like.
And both of those is something that we reflect on weekly. As I'm going through a building, I'm telling our staff, talking about a risk assessment. As you know, if you've got students in your classroom, the door must be locked. It's got to be closed and locked. It's got to be secure. It can't be left open. If you don't have kids, I'm constantly reminding them that, you know, you can have your door open if you're on your planning, but if you've got kids during instructional time, the doors must be locked. And again, working with my office staff, as he said, on that school safety plan, you know, making sure that our visitors come in, identify themselves. They've got an ID. If you're a JCPS employee, we expect you to have that ID on you when you're in our building. If you're not, if you're a visitor, you put on a visitor sticker. So things like that we work through every day.
You're on mute, Ms. Patrick.
I have a cat. I thought he was going to start meowing, so I put myself on mute. My next question is, I guess, to all three of you all. This district constantly talks or speaks about the importance of the sense of belonging. How has the Safe School Administrator helped to promote that concept?
Well, I'll start off in a couple ways. And I think, you know, one of the biggest things with sense of belonging is a student's connectedness and feelings of connectedness to the school. And a lot of that is on relationships. And so when students feel that they have somebody at school, one, that they can go to when they feel unsafe and they have that need met, they're going to go to school, and also when they have somebody that they think they can talk to when they're having a problem or just want to interact. And so you can see this position has really encouraged that. And yet just another position that is kind of there and accessible for students beyond a teacher, beyond an administrator, beyond a counselor, that's going to look for places to connect with our kids. And so I think that's a big one. The other one is that I think, as you'll see in the Atherton example I gave you earlier, having students interact and engage in service projects or any type of after-school group or participate in any type of adult-led event is going to increase their willingness to come to school each day. And so Tammy's working with kids in her service to service project. As I mentioned earlier, that's engaging kids and that's making them want to be there because it's around things that they're interested in. And so if we had something going on or not going on in a particular school, then a safety administrator is encouraged to kind of fill that void and look for ways to fill that gap with any type of program. And that's just one example. It looks a lot of different ways and can look a lot of different ways across our schools.
And from my point of view, especially as chief of schools, one of the things I'm going to look at the end of the year is our comprehensive school survey, which has a component of sense of belonging in it. Once all of our school data gets in, I'll be very interested to see school by school how that metric has changed from not just last year, but just over time. So I'm very interested to see that data. And then when you just take a look at the threats we have received, whether it's been online or whether we've had guns reported, the self-reporting numbers, and I didn't think to even check or find a way to measure that because at this point we don't have a way to measure it. But I would venture to say that it is up from the past few years. How many self-reportings we have of threats, guns. Students are really taking ownership in the safety of their building. So I think that's an anecdotal measurement there that students want their schools to be safe. So anytime there's a threat, whether it's online, verbal, they are reaching out to our safety administrators, and we're able to provide that school with some support.
That's pretty much a follow-up question that I had was that how will the district measure the success of this initiative through a metrics, and has one been developed? So I think what you're telling me, you don't have that yet to determine the success of this program, but you all are working on it. Is that what you're saying to me?
Well,
Dr.
we're also working with, and I can elaborate on that. So that's, there are numerous data points that we could look at. Behavior really isn't one as it, relates to Infinite Campus and what we see, because we don't really want this role dealing with behavior. Chief Moore is exactly right. Our threat assessment data is pivotal, but we're also working with our data department this year around implementation and collaborating with Vanderbilt University specifically. This year, our focus in being a new position is making sure that we have real clarity and that everyone understands that and that the position is supported because it is a new position. So much of our conversation now is around, we're doing a quantitative and qualitative data around our safety administrators doing what we've said they're going to be doing. Knowing we have a lot of different contexts, we have a lot of different schools, there's 66 of them. At the end of the day, what Tanya is talking about them doing, that's what we want them doing. So we're really focusing on that. Do we have real clarity in the position? And then second to that, is there clarity from principals about how to support them? And are we as a district doing a good job of providing them all of the needs and training and supports that they need? And so I think as of now, when you talk about effectiveness, it's also a tough measure when we talk about safety. It's like, how many things did we prevent? That will always be hard to know, but initially I can tell you where we're really trying to hone in is really on the real clarity.
Ian, do you have a question, or you want me to continue with mine?
This role obviously does a lot of collaboration with internal departments and students, but is there a goal or an intent for this safety administrator position to engage with community?
Well, I think we had one such. I mean, what Atherton is doing is engaging the community, and there are some who are leading in some service projects, but just where some schools geographically are located makes it a little more challenging for them to engage in the community just because of where the school is located. I think our new student assignment plan is going to help with that once that is fully implemented. It would help more engagement with the community, but we do fully expect our safety administrators to engage in the community of the schools.
You know, so often we have these new initiatives and they seem to work, and then they go by the wayside. How are we funding the school administrators? Are we using money from the stimulus, or is this ongoing money that the board members have set aside for this?
We're using our general funds and our school safety funds in order to fund these positions. So this is not anything we're using from ESSER.
Okay. Let me ask you something. In light of all the data that we've received from test scores, the question I have is, how is the presence of the Safe School Administrator impact teaching and learning in the assigned schools?
I spoke to that a little bit in the presentation earlier, but I really think it's allowing some of our administrators to really focus on academics. As I said, administrators get pulled 1,000 different directions. One piece of that pie, or one piece of that job description, is supporting teachers in the classroom. I think with this position, we've been able to expand that and take that off of them, put it on people like Tanya, who we trust and know are going to do a great job, and then allow that assistant principal, whereas before they would be maybe working on a threat assessment team. Now they can go in and observe the classroom. They can provide individualized teacher support. They can provide feedback to teachers. They're now freed up time on professional development days to not only create professional development, but also deliver it. They're available more frequently for professional learning communities, where we're really taking a look at our MAP data, where we're really taking a look at our student learning data, both formatively and summatively. And so I think that's, we're hearing that too. It's not just me saying that. That is actively, I think, what our principals and our assistant superintendents are saying about the role. It's really giving them more time to focus on those things.
You know, I know that Ms. Collins has the background in social work. With the 65 other safety school administrators, how do their backgrounds range? Do you have people that have retired from law enforcement to be those? What are some of the backgrounds of the people you have engaged in this program?
It's varied. We do have social work, we have MHP, we do have some security level work. We do have some, a lot of our Friskies applied for this position. And it is varied, and I say it's varied because that's actually the feedback we got from the community. One of the biggest things they said was, make this a position that we know we can get the right people for. It is a classified position. So as such, we do cast a wider net, which allows people that may have experience in our buildings or may not. And there's, goods and bads to both of those. It really allowed us to do that and really engage people that we know would be great. They do great things with kids in the community. There just hasn't been a position for them, or they're doing good things with our kids and we need them to do more. And we want to recognize that. And so primarily those are some things that we looked at as some key elements, but it was varied, and that was intentional, and that was based on our community feedback for that reason.
I've heard this district talk a lot about the REAP protocol and how it's being used. When you came up with this initial position, did you all run that through the protocol?
Yes, ma'am.
That's all you're gonna say?
Yes. Yes, we ran
Okay.
into the REAP protocol. We run all of our major initiatives and our major policies through the REAP protocol.
Okay, all right. I have about 35 more seconds. Ian, do you have a question?
No, Ms. Patrick, I think all mine have been answered via follow-up and from the presentation. So I did place in the chat the opportunity for any attendees to ask a question. So feel free to shoot me your question in the chat should you have it.
Okay, I think yep. And that's done. We've used up all our time. I want to thank you all again for being here tonight and to enlighten me as well as the community about the Safe School Administrators. I will be sending up major prayers for all the Safe School Administrators. You all have a lot to do. And I would like to thank everyone for being here tonight. This concludes our question and answer period. I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Ian Brandon so he can talk about our January forum.
As you all know, we will not be having a forum for December. So I will be sending out the information to all attendees for the January forum, which also will include the flyer, the link to register, and obviously a place to provide questions. I also would like to acknowledge Minister Sorrell, board member as well. I know he was not on when we first joined, but I would like this opportunity to welcome him. And as I mentioned earlier, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was just gonna say thank you. It's a pleasure to be on tonight. I've learned a lot. Thank you all for your work and your engagement.
And as I mentioned before, I will place the second link, which is the evaluation link for the form. So again, I encourage you all to complete that. We look forward to your feedback. We want to continue to make these better each time we do it. So thank you for that. I will post that in the chat now.
This concludes our forum fun tonight. I look forward to our next forum in January. I'm just going to tell you good night. Be safe and have a great holiday. See you in January.
Yeah, thanks for the booster tip.
Move that arm.